This is where it all began.
The dinner was still warm when I walked through the front door at 6:47 p.m. on a Tuesday that would split my life into before and after. Half-chopped onions sat on the cutting board next to our good knife, the one Lorelei insisted we register for at our wedding 3 years ago. Steam rose from a pot of boiling water that had been abandoned mid-preparation. A yellow sticky note clung to the refrigerator door. "Taking a breather, don't panic, just need some air." Well, I stood there for maybe 10 minutes, keys still in my hand, work boots tracked with warehouse dust, staring at those 11 words that felt wrong in ways I couldn't name yet. Lorelei didn't take breathers, she took calculated moves. My phone buzzed. A text from her. "Flew to Santa Fe, need to clear my head, back in a few days." Santa Fe. She'd never mentioned wanting to go to Santa Fe. Hell, she'd never mentioned wanting to go anywhere without mapping out every detail months in advance. Lorelei was the type who color-coded our shared calendar and labeled leftover containers with preparation dates. I turned off the stove and dumped the pasta water down the drain. The onions went into the trash. The knife went back into the block, but I noticed my hands were steadier than they should have been for a man whose wife had just vanished without warning. That steadiness bothered me more than her absence. By Thursday, her Instagram lit up with photos. Lorelei at some Adobe restaurant laughing with people I'd never seen. Lorelei hiking Red Rock trails in hiking boots she didn't own when she left home. Lorelei at what looked like a house party, red wine in hand, tagged location showing some residential neighborhood I couldn't pronounce. The comments poured in from her usual crowd of work friends and college sorority sisters. "Living your best life," and "You deserve this, girl," and "Adventure looks good on you." But it was the tagged faces that made me screenshot everything. 3 people appeared in multiple photos, 2 women who looked like standard Santa Fe tourist types, and 1 man, Travis, according to the tag. Dark hair, sleeve tattoos, the kind of smile that probably worked on women who were pretending they weren't married. He appeared in 7 photos across 2 days, always positioned just a little too close to my wife. Friday night, I called. "Hey, you've reached Lorelei! Leave something good!" Saturday morning, I called again. Same voicemail. Saturday afternoon. "The person you're calling is not available." By Sunday, her phone was going straight to a generic carrier message. I should have been worried. I should have been calling hospitals or filing missing person reports. Instead, I sat at our kitchen table with my laptop, scrolling through every photo she'd posted, every comment, every tag, building a timeline that was starting to look less like a spontaneous vacation and more like something else entirely. Aaron knocked on my door Monday morning before my shift at the depot. "You look like hell," he said, pushing past me into the kitchen. Aaron Lutz had been fixing machinery longer than anyone at Peterson Packaging, and he had the kind of practical intelligence that came from solving problems other people couldn't figure out. Lorelei still playing hide and seek? Something like that. He poured himself coffee from the pot I'd made at 4 a.m. and hadn't touched. "Show me what you got." I opened the laptop and walked him through the photos. Aaron didn't say anything for the first few minutes, just studied each image with the same focus he used to diagnose a busted hydraulic system. "This guy," he finally said, pointing at Travis, "he's not tourist accidentally in the background. He's deliberately in every shot. I noticed that too. And look at this." Aaron zoomed in on a photo from the house party. "See that reflection in the sliding glass door behind them? That's Lorelei's phone taking a selfie. But the angle's wrong for her to be holding it." I looked closer. He was right. The reflection showed the phone being held by someone taller, someone with tattoos on their forearm. "He's taking photos with her phone," Aaron said. Posting to her account, the realization hit like cold water. She's not posting these. Maybe. Or maybe she's letting him post them. Either way, your wife's vacation just got a lot more interesting. Aaron left for work. I called in sick and spent the day going deeper into every photo, every comment, every piece of digital breadcrumb Lorelei had left behind. The house party location led me to a rental property listing. The hiking trail geotag pointed to a specific trailhead. The restaurant had reviews mentioning it was a local hangout, not a tourist spot. By evening, I had an address, a timeline, and a growing certainty that my wife's breather was something closer to a planned escape. My phone buzzed at 11:43 p.m. Unknown number. "We have your wife. $45,000. No cops. You have 24 hours." I stared at the message for maybe 30 seconds, then set the phone down and walked to our bedroom closet. Behind my work clothes, I found the envelope of cash we kept for emergencies. $2,300. Not even close to $45,000. But as I counted the bills, something occurred to me that should have terrified me, but instead felt like clarity. I wasn't panicking. I wasn't shaking. I wasn't calling 911 or running to the neighbors or breaking down crying. I was calculating. The ransom text had arrived exactly 3 days after Lorelai's last Instagram post. Professional kidnappers don't wait 3 days to make demands. They strike fast and hard while the victim's absence is still fresh, before anyone has time to think or investigate or prepare. This felt different. This felt like someone who needed time to set up their story. I texted back, "Proof of life first." The response came within minutes. A photo of Lorelai sitting on what looked like a motel bed, holding a newspaper dated today. She looked tired, but unharmed. No visible bruises or restraints. Her hair was styled. She was wearing makeup. People who've been kidnapped for 3 days don't usually have time for makeup. I called Aaron. "I need help with something technical," I said when he answered. "Can you come over?" 20 minutes later, Aaron sat at my kitchen table with a laptop bag and a thermos of coffee, listening to me explain about the ransom demand. 45,000 is specific, he said. Not 50, not 40. Someone calculated that exact amount for a reason. That's what I was thinking. Aaron opened his laptop and plugged in a device that looked like a thumb drive. "Good news is, your wife never changed the password on her cloud backup. I helped her set it up 2 years ago, remember? After her phone got stolen at that conference. You can access her stuff remotely. All of it, photos, texts, location history, app data. If she's been communicating with someone, we'll find it." For the next 2 hours, we combed through Lorelai's digital life. Her text messages going back 6 months revealed a pattern I'd somehow missed while living in the same house with her. Late-night conversations with numbers not saved in her contacts. Deleted message threads that Aaron's software recovered. Photo attachments that painted a very different picture of my wife's recent activities. The messages with Travis started 8 weeks ago. "Can't wait to see you again," from Travis, sent the day after a work conference Lorelai attended in Denver. "Miss you too," from Lorelai, sent from our bedroom while I slept beside her. The conversation threads were filled with plans, not for a vacation, for an exit strategy. "I've been married too long," Lorelai had texted. "He's a good guy, but God, I'm dying of boredom." "So leave," Travis replied. "Come to Santa Fe. I know people. We could disappear for a while." "I can't just vanish. There's money tied up in joint accounts, the house. I need time to figure it out." "What if you didn't have a choice? What if something happened that forced his hand?" Aaron and I read that exchange in silence. "Son of a bitch," Aaron finally said. "This whole thing is theater." The kidnapping was fake. Lorelai had orchestrated her own disappearance, probably planning to take the ransom money and run with Travis. But something had gone wrong. The messages between her and Travis from the past 2 days showed increasing tension. "You said this would be simple," from Lorelai yesterday. "It is simple. Your husband pays, we split it, problem solved," from Travis. "He's not stupid. What if he figures it out? Then we disappear anyway. I've got connections. We'll be fine." The last message was from this morning. "Something's wrong. He's not responding like you said he would. He's too calm." I looked at Aaron. She knows me better than she thought. "What do you want to do?" I closed the laptop and walked to the kitchen window. Outside, our neighbor Jim was mowing his lawn in the dark, headlamp strapped to his forehead like he did every Monday night after his double shift at the plant. Normal people living normal lives, unaware that the man next door was discovering his wife had faked her own kidnapping. "I want to find them," I said. And then, I thought about that question longer than I should have. The old me, the Ike from a week ago, would have said something about calling the police or getting Lorelai help or trying to work things out. But the old me had been married to a woman who apparently didn't exist. Then we see what happens. Aaron packed up his equipment. I've got GPS location data from her phone. Last ping was from a motel outside Santa Fe. Place called the Desert Rose. "Can you get me the exact address?" Already did. He handed me a piece of paper with coordinates and a street address. "Ike, whatever you're planning, think it through. This kind of thing can go sideways fast." After Aaron left, I sat at the kitchen table and made a list. Not a list of what to pack or how to get there, but a list of everything Lorelei had taken from me without asking. Trust, 3 years of marriage. The assumption that the person sleeping next to me wasn't calculating how to betray me. The list was longer than I expected. I took 2 days off work and booked a flight to Albuquerque for Wednesday morning. The lie I told my supervisor felt easier than it should have. Family emergency, back by the weekend. He didn't ask questions. I'd been the reliable guy for too long to start raising suspicions now. Tuesday night, I packed light. Work clothes, toiletries, the envelope of emergency cash. I also packed some items that wouldn't make sense to most people planning a reunion with their kidnapped wife. A small crowbar that fit in my duffel bag, zip ties, duct tape, a prepaid phone I'd bought with cash. The flight was 3 hours. I spent it reading through Lorelei's recovered messages on Aaron's laptop, building a timeline of her deception. By the time we touched down in Albuquerque, I understood exactly how long my wife had been planning to destroy our marriage. 8 weeks of preparation, 2 months of lies told to my face every single night. The Desert Rose Motel sat on a strip of highway that looked like it hadn't been updated since 1987. Pink stucco walls, neon sign missing half its letters, parking lot full of potholes and vehicles that had seen better decades. Room 23 was on the ground floor, curtains drawn, no activity visible from the outside. I parked my rental car at a gas station across the street and waited. At 4:17 p.m., a man matching Travis's description from the photos walked out of room 23. He was taller than I'd expected, probably 6'2", wearing jeans and a black t-shirt that showed off the sleeve tattoos. He looked around the parking lot like someone checking for surveillance, then walked to a red pickup truck and drove away. I waited another 10 minutes, then crossed the street. The motel room door was thin and cheap. I could hear voices inside. Lorelei and at least one other person. A man with an accent I couldn't place. I knocked. "Travis?" Lorelei's voice. "Hotel management," I said, disguising my voice. "Need to check the water heater." "We didn't call about any water heater." "Building-wide issue, just need 2 minutes." Silence. Then footsteps approaching the door. The man who opened it wasn't Travis. Shorter, stockier, with the kind of face that had been hit too many times. He looked me up and down with the casual hostility of someone used to handling problems through violence. "You don't look like hotel management," he said. Behind him, I could see Lorelei sitting on the bed, wearing the same clothes from the proof of life photo. Her eyes went wide when she saw me. "Ike?" she said. "What are you doing here?" The stocky man started to close the door. I put my shoulder against it and pushed. He was stronger than me, but I'd spent 15 years moving heavy equipment for a living. We had a brief shoving match that ended when I got the crowbar out of my jacket and showed it to him. "Let's all be smart about this," I said. He backed away from the door. I stepped into the room and closed it behind me. The motel room smelled like cigarettes and takeout food. Lorelei sat on the bed looking like she'd been caught stealing, which I suppose she had been. The stocky man positioned himself between me and her, ready to play protector. "Who's your friend?" I asked Lorelei. "This is Deke," she said, "Travis's cousin." "Where's Travis?" "Getting supplies," Deke said. "He'll be back soon." "Good. I want to talk to all of you." I pulled the desk chair around and sat down, keeping the crowbar visible but not threatening, yet. "So, here's what I know," I said. "My wife didn't get kidnapped. She faked it. She's been planning to leave me for 2 months, and the ransom demand was supposed to fund her new life with Travis. Sound about right?" Lorelei stared at her hands. Deke looked like he was calculating whether he could take the crowbar away from me before I used it. "The thing is," I continued, "I don't really care about the money. $45,000 isn't enough to ruin my life over. But the lying? The months of deception? The fake kidnapping designed to make me think my wife was in danger?" I stood up and walked to the window, checking the parking lot for Travis's red truck. "That's the kind of thing that changes a person," I said. "Ike, please," Lorelei said. "It's not what you think." "What do I think?" "You think I don't love you. You think this was all about money or hurting you. But it wasn't. I just needed something different. I needed to feel alive again by faking your own kidnapping. That was Travis's idea. I never wanted to hurt you." Deke was getting restless, shifting his weight like he was preparing to make a move. I turned the crowbar slightly in his direction. "Here's what's going to happen," I said. "Travis comes back, we have a conversation, and then I decide what to do next. Everyone stays calm, everyone stays smart, and maybe we all walk away from this. And if we don't want to wait, Deke asked, then things get complicated for everyone. 20 minutes later, I heard the red pickup truck pull into the parking lot. Travis walked through the door carrying a bag of groceries and stopped dead when he saw me sitting in the chair. Well, he said, setting the bag on the small table, this is unexpected. He was calmer than I'd anticipated, not panicked or aggressive, just evaluating the situation like someone used to adapting to changing circumstances. You must be Ike, he said. Lorelei's told me a lot about you. I'm sure she has. Travis pulled a beer from the grocery bag and opened it. Want one? We should probably talk this through like adults. I'm good. He sat on the bed next to Lorelei, close enough to touch her but not possessive about it. That casual intimacy bothered me more than if he'd been groping her. So you figured it out, Travis said. The kidnapping thing? Have to admit, I'm impressed. Most people would have just paid and asked questions later. I'm not most people. No, you're not. He took a long drink of beer. Question is, what do you want to do about it? I looked at my wife, sitting next to a man who'd helped her fake her own kidnapping, and tried to remember when I'd last felt anything for her besides the dull habit of familiarity. I want to know why, I said. Money, Deke said. 45 grand split 3 ways, not complicated. I wasn't asking you. Lorelei finally looked up at me. You want the truth? That would be nice. I've been unhappy for 2 years. Maybe longer. Every day felt exactly like the day before. Work, dinner, television, bed, weekend errands, Sunday meal prep, Monday back to work. I felt like I was disappearing. So you decided to actually disappear. I decided to try something different. Travis made me feel like myself again, like someone worth paying attention to. Travis put his hand on her knee. A small gesture, but clearly meant for me to see. The ransom thing was supposed to be simple, Lorelei continued. You'd pay, I'd be rescued, and a few months later we'd get divorced. I'd have enough money to start over somewhere new. With Travis. Maybe. I hadn't decided that part yet. I stood up and walked to the small bathroom where I could see all 3 of them in the mirror while I processed what I'd just heard. My wife had faked her own kidnapping not out of desperation or fear, but out of boredom. She'd calculated the destruction of our marriage like a business transaction. When I came back out, Travis was whispering something to Lorelei. She was shaking her head. Problem? I asked. Travis thinks we should just leave, Lorelei said. Drive away and let you figure out what to tell people. What do you think? She looked at me for a long moment. I think I made a mistake. Not about leaving, that part I still want, but about the way I did it. I should have just asked for a divorce. Yes, you should have. So what now? Travis asked. You call the cops? Try to have us arrested for fraud? I thought about that. Calling the police would mean reports and investigations and court dates, and everyone in our town knowing exactly what Lorelei had done. It would mean months of legal proceedings and probably not much justice at the end of it. No, I said. No cops. Then what? I looked at the 3 of them sitting there, waiting for me to decide their fate. Lorelei, who'd betrayed me with calculated precision. Travis, who'd helped her do it for money. Deke, who was just muscle, but had been willing to traumatize a stranger for cash. I'm going to leave, I said. You 3 can do whatever you want. But Lorelei, don't come home, don't call, don't contact me again. As far as I'm concerned, you really did disappear. I walked to the door, then turned back. One more thing. That proof of life photo you sent? I've got copies of all your text messages, all your planning conversations, all the evidence of what you really did. If any of you ever contact me again, those go to the police, to your families, to your employers, and to social media. Everyone will know exactly what kind of people you are. I left them sitting there and drove away. The flight home gave me time to think about what came next. Divorce papers, obviously. Splitting assets, changing bank accounts, all the practical stuff that comes with the end of a marriage. But there was something else growing in me during those 3 hours at 30,000 feet. Something cold and methodical that felt like it might be who I really was underneath 15 years of trying to be a good husband. Aaron was waiting in my driveway when I got home. How'd it go? He asked. About what you'd expect. I told him the whole story while we sat at my kitchen table. He listened without interrupting, occasionally nodding like he'd seen similar situations before. So she's not coming back, he said when I finished. Nope. And you're okay with that? I thought about the question. Was I okay with it? A week ago, the idea of Lorelai leaving would have devastated me. Now, it felt like the logical conclusion to something that had been broken for longer than I'd admitted. Yeah, I said. I'm okay with it. Aaron packed up his laptop. What about Travis and his cousin? You think they'll try anything? I doubt it. They got what they wanted. Lorelai's free and they didn't have to split any money. After Aaron left, I sat in the quiet house and started making plans. Real plans, not the emotional reactions I'd been running on for the past week. Plans that would ensure Lorelai's betrayal had consequences beyond just losing me. The next morning, I called a lawyer. Patricia Flynn specialized in divorce cases, and she had the kind of reputation that made people think twice about lying to her. Fraud, adultery, and conspiracy, she said after I explained the situation. That's what we call the trifecta. Your wife handed you grounds for a fault-based divorce that will leave her with almost nothing. How long will it take? With this kind of evidence? 6 months, maybe less. She won't contest it because she can't afford to. Hiring a lawyer to fight fraud charges would cost more than any settlement she might get. I authorized Patricia to file the papers and freeze our joint accounts. Within 48 hours, Lorelai would discover that her new life of freedom came with some practical limitations. But legal consequences felt like just the beginning. I spent the weekend going through Lorelai's belongings, boxing up clothes and personal items. In her jewelry box, I found a burner phone I'd never seen before. Aaron's software revealed months of deleted conversations with not just Travis, but 2 other men. My wife hadn't just been planning to leave me. She'd been maintaining backup relationships in case the Travis situation didn't work out. The discovery should have hurt more than it did. Instead, it felt like confirmation that the woman I'd been married to was essentially a stranger who'd been using our house as a base of operations for a more interesting life. Monday morning, I went back to work and told anyone who asked that Lorelai was visiting family out of state. I'd learned that controlling the narrative was more important than telling the truth, especially when the truth would invite questions I didn't want to answer. Tuesday afternoon, Lorelai called. Ike, we need to talk. Her voice sounded different. Strained, like someone who'd run into unexpected complications. Nothing to talk about, I said. The bank accounts are frozen. I can't access our money. It's not our money anymore, it's my money. You can't do that. I have rights. You had rights. Before you faked your own kidnapping and committed fraud. Now you have whatever my lawyer says you have, which isn't much. Silence on the line. Then, this isn't fair. Fair would have been asking for a divorce 2 months ago instead of orchestrating an elaborate scam. I made a mistake, okay? But we can work through this. We can go to counseling, figure out what went wrong. I almost laughed. You want to go to counseling with Travis and Deke too? Make it a group session? That's over. Travis and I broke up. Already? What happened to true love? He was using me, okay? Once he figured out you weren't going to pay the ransom, he lost interest. Said I was more trouble than I was worth. Now I did laugh. So your exit strategy fell apart and you want to come home. I want to try to fix things. Here's the thing, Lorelai. I hung up and blocked her number. That evening, I got a visit from Lorelai's sister, Marissa. She stood on my front porch, looking uncomfortable, like someone who'd been elected to handle an unpleasant family situation. Can we talk? She asked. I let her in and made coffee. Marissa had always been the more practical sister, the one who'd warned Lorelai about making impulsive decisions. I wondered how much she knew about the Santa Fe situation. Lorelai called me, Marissa said. She's pretty upset. I imagine she is. She said you froze her out of your bank accounts. That's correct. Marissa sat at the kitchen table and studied my face like she was trying to read something there. She also said she made some mistakes while she was gone, Marissa said carefully. That's one way to put it. Ike, I don't know what happened between you two, but Lorelai is my sister. She's family. If there's any way to work this out. I set my coffee cup down and looked at Marissa directly. Your sister faked her own kidnapping, I said. She spent 2 months planning to leave me, then decided to extort $45,000 from me on her way out. When that didn't work, she tried to come back home like nothing happened. There's nothing to work out. Marissa stared at me. She faked her own kidnapping? Along with her boyfriend and his cousin. They sent me ransom demands and everything. Jesus Christ. Marissa put her head in her hands. I knew she was making bad decisions, but I had no idea. Now you do. What are you going to do? I filed for divorce. She'll get served papers in a day or two. Marissa nodded slowly. She deserves that. Yes, she does. After Marissa left, I realized something had shifted in the conversation. For the first time since this whole thing started, someone from Lorelei's side had acknowledged that her actions were indefensible. It felt like validation, but also like permission to stop holding back. The next morning, I created a new email account and started putting together a comprehensive record of Lorelei's deception. Screenshots of the recovered text messages, photos of the fake kidnapping setup, a detailed timeline showing how long she'd been planning her exit strategy. I didn't send it to anyone, yet, but having it ready felt like having ammunition. Thursday evening, Travis called me. "We need to talk," he said. "No, we don't. Look, I know you're pissed, but this situation is getting out of hand. Lorelei's telling people I forced her to fake the kidnapping. That's not what happened. I don't care what happened. You should care. She's setting me up to take the fall for the whole thing, making herself look like a victim." I almost hung up, but something in his voice made me curious. "What do you want?" "I want to meet. One conversation, then we're done, but you need to know what your wife was really planning." Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet him at a diner 20 miles outside town. Neutral territory, public place, low chance of running into anyone who knew me. Travis was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth with his back to the wall like someone used to watching for trouble. Up close, he looked tired and older than in Lorelei's photos. "Thanks for coming," he said. I sat across from him and waited. "First thing you need to know," Travis said, "is that the kidnapping was her idea, not mine." "That's not what she told me." "She's lying. She came to me with the whole plan already worked out. Said her husband was the type who'd pay anything to get her back safely, and we could split the money 50-50. "Why should I believe you?" Travis pulled out his phone and showed me a text thread. "Because I kept records too." The messages were from Lorelei, sent 3 weeks ago. "Been thinking about our conversation. What if something happened to me that forced Ike to liquidate assets quickly? Like an emergency where he needed cash fast? You could disappear for a few days," Travis had replied. "Stage something that looks like trouble." Exactly. He'd pay whatever it took to get me back. Then we split it and start fresh somewhere new. I scrolled through more messages, each one showing Lorelei refining the plan, working out details, calculating how much money they could extract from me. "She played both of us," Travis said. "Made me think you were some soft suburban husband who'd fall apart and pay whatever we asked. Made you think she was an innocent victim who got in over her head. What's your point?" "My point is that she's dangerous. The kind of person who'll destroy anyone if it serves her purpose. Right now, she's telling people I manipulated her into the kidnapping scheme. Next week, she'll probably tell them I threatened to hurt her if she didn't go along with it." I handed his phone back. "Still not my problem." "It is if she comes after you next." "How would she do that?" Travis leaned forward. "Think about it. She's broke, homeless, and facing a divorce that'll leave her with nothing. What's her best play? Convince people you're the bad guy. Maybe she was kidnapped, but it was by someone you hired. Maybe you set the whole thing up to get rid of her." I hadn't considered that possibility, but it made sense. Lorelei had always been good at turning situations to her advantage. "What do you suggest?" I asked. "We protect each other." "I've got proof she planned the whole thing. You've got proof it was consensual from the beginning. Neither of us gets thrown under the bus." I thought about it while Travis ordered another coffee. The smart play was probably to keep him as an ally, at least until Lorelei was completely out of my life. "All right," I said. "But if you ever contact me again after this is resolved, our deal is off." "Fair enough." We shook hands like businessmen concluding a transaction, which I supposed we were. The next week brought a series of small victories. The divorce papers were served to Lorelei at the women's shelter where she'd been staying. Patricia Flynn called to report that Lorelei's court-appointed attorney had already started talking about a quick settlement rather than fighting the fraud charges. "She knows she can't win," Patricia said. "The evidence is overwhelming and she can't afford to drag this out. We should have final papers within the month." But the victory that satisfied me most came from an unexpected source. I was grocery shopping Saturday morning when I ran into Janet Pierce, who worked with Lorelei at the bank. Janet had always been friendly at company parties, the type who remembered everyone's names and asked about family members. "Ike," she said, pushing her card up to mine. "How are you holding up?" "Doing all right, thanks. We all heard about Lorelei's situation. Is she okay?" I realized this was my chance to test Travis's theory about Lorelei spreading lies. "What exactly did you hear?" I asked. Janet looked uncomfortable. "Well, Lorelei called our manager yesterday, said she'd been dealing with some personal safety issues and needed extended leave. Something about an abusive relationship and having to disappear for a while." There it was. Lorelei was already rewriting history, painting herself as a victim fleeing domestic violence. "That's interesting," I said. "Because what actually happened was that she faked her own kidnapping to extort money from me, then ran off with her boyfriend when the plan didn't work." Janet's eyes went wide. "What?" I pulled out my phone and showed her some of the recovered text messages between Lorelei and Travis. Nothing too personal, just enough to demonstrate the planning and premeditation involved. "Jesus," Janet said after reading. "She really planned all this? For 2 months? And now she's telling people you were abusive?" "Apparently," Janet shook her head. "I need to call Mr. Davidson. He needs to know the truth before she comes back to work." By Monday morning, word had spread through Lorelei's workplace. Patricia Flynn called to tell me that Lorelei's attorney wanted to schedule a meeting. "She's ready to sign whatever we put in front of her," Patricia said. "No assets, no alimony, clean break. The bank fired her after they found out about the fraud, so she doesn't have income to fight us anyway. When can we finalize it?" "Tomorrow, if you want." I wanted. The meeting took place in Patricia's office. Lorelei arrived with a public defender who looked like he'd been assigned the case that morning. She'd lost weight and looked older, like someone who'd been living on stress and gas station food. She wouldn't make eye contact with me while we signed papers, but I could see her hands shaking slightly as she wrote her signature on document after document. The dissolution of our marriage, reduced to a stack of legal forms and notary stamps. "That's it," Patricia said when the last signature was complete. "You're officially divorced." Lorelei finally looked at me. "I hope you're happy." "I'm satisfied," I said. After she left with her attorney, Patricia walked me to the elevator. "Congratulations," she said. "You handled this exactly right. Most people in your situation make emotional decisions that cost them money and time. You stayed strategic. What happens to her now? Not your problem anymore, but if I had to guess, she'll probably leave town, start over somewhere else, try to reinvent herself again." The elevator doors opened and I stepped inside. As they closed, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months: complete freedom. No joint accounts, no shared responsibilities, no need to consider another person's feelings or needs when making decisions. I drove home to an empty house that finally felt like mine again. But that feeling lasted exactly 3 days. Tuesday evening, I got a call from Aaron. "You need to see something," he said. "Can you come over?" Aaron lived in a small house near the industrial district, surrounded by half-finished projects and enough electronic equipment to run a small business. When I arrived, he was sitting at his computer with a look of concern that immediately put me on alert. "What's wrong?" I asked. "Remember how I set up monitoring on Lorelei's social media accounts? Just to make sure she wasn't spreading lies about you?" "Yeah. Well, she's been busy." Aaron turned his laptop screen toward me. "Take a look." Lorelei had created a new Facebook account under her maiden name. The profile picture showed her with shorter hair and no makeup, looking vulnerable and tired. The posts told a story of survival and recovery. "Grateful to be safe," read one post. "Sometimes the people closest to you are the ones who hurt you most. But I'm learning to rebuild." Another post: "To anyone dealing with domestic abuse, there is help available. You don't have to suffer in silence." I wish I'd reached out sooner. The comments were full of support from friends and strangers. "So proud of you for getting out. And you're so brave for sharing your story." "She's playing the victim card hard," Aaron said. "But it gets worse." He scrolled down to a longer post from yesterday. "I've been hesitant to share details, but I think it's important for people to understand how financial abuse works. My ex-husband controlled all our money, monitored my communications, and when I finally tried to leave, he froze me out of our accounts completely. I literally had nowhere to go. If it wasn't for friends helping me, I don't know what would have happened." The post had been shared dozens of times and had over 100 comments of outrage and support. "She's rewriting the entire story," I said. "Gets worse," Aaron repeated, clicking to another tab. She started a GoFundMe. The fundraising page was titled, "Help Lorelai Rebuild After Domestic Abuse." It included the same carefully edited version of events, along with a photo of her looking exhausted and defeated. The goal was $25,000 for basic living expenses while I get back on my feet. It had already raised $800. "Son of a bitch," I said. "There's more. She's been reaching out to your friends and neighbors, telling them her side of the story. Mrs. Patterson from down the street called my wife this afternoon asking if it was true that you'd been abusing Lorelai. I felt something cold and angry building in my chest. Lorelai wasn't just trying to survive or start over. She was actively working to destroy my reputation and make money doing it. What did your wife tell Mrs. Patterson? The truth? That Lorelai faked her own kidnapping and tried to extort money from you. But she's just one neighbor. Lorelai's been making a lot of calls. I thought about Janet Pierce at the grocery store, how shocked she'd been to learn the real story. Most people wouldn't do their own investigation. They'd just hear Lorelai's version and assume I was some kind of monster. What do you think I should do? I asked. Aaron closed the laptop. You've got two choices. Let her tell her story and hope people eventually figure out the truth, or tell your story first. You mean the email I put together? The evidence? All of it. Text messages, photos, timeline, everything. Send it to everyone she's contacted and anyone else who might matter. Get ahead of this before she poisons the well completely. I drove home thinking about Aaron's advice. The smart thing would probably be to ignore Lorelai's lies and let them blow over. Most people in our town didn't know either of us well enough to care about our personal drama for very long. But the anger I'd been keeping under control for weeks was starting to break through. Lorelai hadn't just betrayed me. She was actively trying to make other people believe I was a violent criminal. She was raising money by claiming to be a victim of abuse she'd never experienced. That crossed a line I didn't know I had. I spent Wednesday evening putting together a comprehensive response. Not an angry rant, but a methodical presentation of facts. Screenshots of text messages showing Lorelai planning the fake kidnapping. Photos from her social media showing her happy and relaxed with Travis. A timeline demonstrating that her escape from abuse was actually a failed extortion scheme. I wrote a cover letter explaining the situation in simple terms. My ex-wife has been telling people that I was abusive and that she had to flee for her safety. This is false. The attached evidence shows that she actually faked her own kidnapping to extort money from me, then tried to return home when the scheme failed. I'm sharing this information because I believe people deserve to know the truth. Thursday morning, I sent the package to 15 people, Lorelai's work colleagues, our neighbors, mutual friends, and family members. I also reported her GoFundMe page for fraud, providing the same evidence. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Janet Pierce called first. Holy shit, Ike. I knew something was off about her story, but this is insane. She planned all of this? Every detail. I'm forwarding this to everyone at the bank. People need to know what kind of person she really is. Over the next 2 days, I received calls and messages from people I hadn't talked to in months. Everyone had the same reaction, shock, followed by anger that they'd been manipulated. Lorelai's GoFundMe page was suspended pending investigation. Her Facebook posts started attracting different kinds of comments as people who'd seen my evidence began challenging her version of events. By Saturday, the narrative had completely flipped. Instead of a brave survivor sharing her story, Lorelai looked like a manipulative liar who'd been caught in an elaborate fraud. And then she made her final mistake. Saturday evening, Lorelai showed up at my house. I saw her through the front window, standing on my porch in the same clothes she'd worn to sign the divorce papers. She looked angry in a way I'd rarely seen during our marriage. I opened the door, but didn't invite her in. You destroyed me, she said without preamble. You destroyed yourself. I just provided documentation. Those text messages were private. You had no right to share them. I had every right to defend myself against false accusations. She pushed past me into the house before I could stop her. I followed her into the living room where she turned to face me with the kind of rage that comes from having nowhere left to run. Do you have any idea what you've done? She said. I can't get a job. I can't rent an apartment. Everyone in this entire town thinks I'm some kind of criminal. You are some kind of criminal. You committed fraud. It was supposed to be simple. You were supposed to pay the money, I was supposed to disappear, and we both would have moved on with our lives. Except you decided to come back when your boyfriend dumped you. Travis was using me. I figured that out too late. I sat down in my recliner and looked at my ex-wife, standing in the middle of my living room, finally telling the complete truth about her motivations. She looked desperate and cornered, like someone who'd run out of lies to tell. What do you want, Lorelei? I want you to fix this. Send another email telling people you made a mistake. Say the evidence was fake or taken out of context. Why would I do that? Because if you don't, I'll make your life hell. I'll file restraining orders, harassment charges, whatever it takes. I'll make people believe you're stalking me. I almost laughed. With what evidence? You think anyone's going to believe you after they've seen those text messages? I'll find a way. I always find a way. No, you don't. You found one way, and it failed. Now you're broke, unemployed, and homeless because you thought you were smarter than everyone else. Lorelei stared at me with the kind of hatred that comes from recognizing a truth you don't want to face. You used to love me, she said. I used to love someone I thought you were. Turns out that person never existed. She existed. She just wanted more than you could give her. She wanted more than anyone could give her. That's why she's standing in her ex-husband's living room begging him to fix her life. Lorelei picked up a framed photo from the side table, our wedding picture, and threw it against the wall. The glass shattered, leaving the photo itself torn and scattered among the fragments. Feel better? I asked. Fuck you, Ike. You already did that. For 2 months, while planning to rob me. How'd that work out? She walked to the door, then turned back one more time. This isn't over, she said. Yes, it is. After she left, I cleaned up the broken glass and torn photo. It occurred to me that this was probably the last time I'd ever see Lorelei face to face. The thought should have made me sad, but instead it felt like relief. Monday morning brought news that felt like the final chapter. Aaron called to tell me that Lorelei had been arrested. What for? I asked. Fraud charges. Apparently after her GoFundMe got shut down, she tried to run the same scam with a domestic violence shelter in the next county. Told them the same story, tried to get emergency housing and financial assistance. But someone there had seen your evidence package and recognized her name. So she's in jail, for now. Her public defender is probably trying to work out a plea deal. But between the fake kidnapping and the fraudulent fundraising, she's looking at real consequences this time. I felt something that might have been satisfaction, but it was colder and more complete than that. Lorelei had finally faced a situation she couldn't manipulate or lie her way out of. That evening, I got an unexpected visitor. Marissa stood on my porch, holding a bottle of wine and looking embarrassed. I owe you an apology, she said. I let her in and opened the wine while she sat at my kitchen table. I saw the evidence you sent around, she said. The text messages, everything. I had no idea Lorelei was capable of something like that. Most people didn't. I keep thinking about all the times she complained about you, said you were boring, that you didn't understand her, that you were holding her back. I thought she was just venting about normal marriage stuff. Maybe she was, doesn't excuse what she did. Marissa took a long drink of wine. She called me from jail today. What did she say? That this was all a misunderstanding. That you'd manipulated the evidence somehow? That Travis had forced her into the kidnapping thing? Marissa shook her head. Even now, even sitting in a jail cell, she's still lying. That's who she is. I used to think I knew my sister. Turns out I was just seeing the version of herself she wanted me to see. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, drinking wine and watching the sunset through my kitchen window. What are you going to do now? Marissa asked. Live my life. Go to work, fix up the house, maybe travel a little. All the things I couldn't do when I was married to someone who needed constant drama and excitement. You don't sound bitter. I thought about that. I'm not bitter. I'm grateful. Grateful? She showed me who she really was before I wasted any more years with her. That's a gift, even if it didn't feel like one at the time. Marissa finished her wine and stood to leave. For what it's worth, I think you handled this whole thing better than most people would have. I handled it the way she taught me to. What do you mean? She showed me that sometimes the people closest to you are playing by different rules. Once I understood that, everything else became simple. After Marissa left, I sat on my front porch and watched the neighborhood settle into evening routines. Families having dinner, kids playing in yards, normal people living normal lives without having to calculate whether their spouses were planning to betray them. 3 months later, Aaron brought me news of the final resolution. Lorelei had pleaded guilty to fraud charges in exchange for 18 months probation and mandatory restitution payments. She'd moved to a city 3 states away, where she was working at a call center and living in a studio apartment under supervision. Think you'll ever hear from her again? Aaron asked. No. She's smart enough to know that any contact with me violates her plea agreement. And you're okay with how everything turned out? I thought about the question while I finished my beer. Was I okay with it? My marriage was over, my ex-wife was a convicted criminal, and half the people I'd known for years had discovered that someone they trusted was capable of elaborate deception. But I was also free. Free from wondering if the person I lived with was plotting against me. Free from the exhaustion of trying to satisfy someone who was fundamentally unsatisfiable. Free from the marriage I'd been clinging to long after it had become something else entirely. Yeah, I told Aaron, I'm okay with it. That night, I deleted all the photos of Lorelei from my phone and computer. The evidence files I kept, locked away in case I ever needed them again. But the memories of our life together, those I let go completely. I'd learned something important during those months of betrayal and revenge. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is refuse to be their victim. Lorelei had expected me to be the loyal husband who'd pay any price to get her back, then forgive any betrayal to keep her home. Instead, I'd become someone who understood that actions have consequences, even when those actions are taken by people you used to love. The next morning, I drove to work like I had every weekday for 15 years. But for the first time in longer than I could remember, I was looking forward to seeing what came next. Some stories end with reconciliation or redemption. This one ended with clarity. Lorelei had chosen her path when she decided that betraying me was easier than talking to me. I'd chosen mine when I decided that protecting myself was more important than protecting her from the consequences of her choices. We'd both gotten exactly what we'd earned. The end.